priority. And then as far as administering the interim assessment, there's a lot of, this website is great for educators. They're going to ask you guys a lot of questions. Well, what can I do? What can't I do? And keep in mind, the interims are not like the summatives in the fact that you have to follow this model. The interims allow you a lot of discretion at the district level in how they are implemented. And the biggest thing we always say with interims, we are recommending using interims this fall, ICAs, to try to get a read on where students are at. But we always are telling districts, make sure you have a plan in place on what you're going to do with that data before you actually administer any kind of assessment. Because if you don't have the plan in place, then essentially it's just a wasted effort in doing the assessment, because the bottom line is, what are you going to do with the data? So this is, when it comes to do's and don'ts, keep in mind the interims are semi-secure items, and meaning don't put any test items, don't put them on a public page, anything like that. And so it's just a bunch of resources here. Now, I have spoken long enough, I believe, and you're probably sick of it, but those are I'm giving you a broad brush paint, trying to paint this with a pretty broad brush to give you an idea of the resources. It can get very detailed from here and nuanced, but I'm just going to open it up. If you guys have any questions, clarification, something I didn't address, something I was confusing on, and I'll have Carrie and Julie help me, and we'll try to answer as much as we can to go from here.
Printing and sharing. So if you have students there are some schools that are just doing printed materials, they're doing packets. Is there anything that you can print on the interims, or is it all just online?
That is a great question. Up until this year, everything was online. Going into that sample items resource that I just showed you, and sorry, I'm not going to try to make you dizzy because it's always frustrating watching somebody scroll on a screen. But this resource right here, this sample items website right here, if you click on here, it will take you to a website here. This is newer sample items page, and you can browse test items. And when you browse test items, Amy, you can go in and you can filter it by grade, by content standard, and it gives you a test item that you can then download into a PDF. And you can use those PDFs, and obviously using the same, semi-secure protocols. You can use these resources if you're sending out packets, and use these sample items in that remote learning manner of a packet, if you will. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much.
Schools have to use this, or can we use maps? And Julie Merkel is on, I think she's my supervisor, and she's recommending, no, we need to have everybody use this so that we can use it as a growth model too. It might be, if you want to use maps, that's in addition to, and we can talk more about that later. But the second question, I think, Dwayne, I'm going to have you take, and that is, if we can't, what does the data our teachers receive look like, and how user-friendly is it?
Okay, what we're doing is, when you look at that data, and I can get into the weeds here, and please, Carrie and Julie, rein me in if you see that I'm going to go way out in the weeds with you guys on this. But essentially what we're doing is, if you recall in the past, Airways was interim reporting, and the online reporting system was summative reporting. And with that, what we're doing this year is, it's going to be combined. Both summative and interim reports, student reports, are going to be combined into one reporting center. It's going to be called the reporting center. What will they look like? They will look like just like the interims have always looked like. The summatives are going to, the graphics will steer more towards those summatives. Now, I do have a few, and I'm trying to pull it up here on my other screen. I do have a few slide decks that I have that I can give you at least a sneak peek of what you're looking at with those scores. And one of the beauties of the interims is, not only does it align to Montana content standards, but it also directly, you're comparing it with your summative. So everything aligns in that, and that you have both the summative and any interim scores where you can look and align those across each other. So for example, I'm just going to give you a quick peek here. This would be your interim comprehensive assessment. It's going to look the score report is going to look very, very similar as to what it does for you. It's actually going to look identical to what your summative is going to look like the end of this year. It's going to look very similar to what your summatives have looked like previously. So when you look at this, you do get a score report for your summatives where it breaks down the individual student scores. And it's very similar, like I said, it's very similar to what you have had before with your trend data over time. It's all historical data, by the way, will be transferred over to the new reporting system, so it won't start new. All historical data will be there. And then you have your, like I said, up here you have your barrel chart. And so that's the individual student score. Now, when you dive into jumping down into, you also have your interims, introduction to interims over in this presentation that I can give you a look. It'll be just the same as what you had previously if you've administered interim. So if you go to interim score reports, you'll go to the reporting center. And if you don't want individual student score reports, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to see as a class-wide, so these are your grades. You can choose them. Interim comprehensive assessment. Any assessment that is taken in Smarter Balance will be on this new dashboard. And you can see whether it's a summative or an interim comprehensive assessment. So that's the beauty of taking interims, is they all directly align. They measure the same standards, and they all directly align. You can use those. You can take it down here and you can filter it down to your test group, what grade it is, how many students took the scores, and then you can even go into one layer. The next layer down is, these would be your students in grade, like this would be grade 6, and it shows you how the class did, it shows you how each individual student did, it shows you the item numbers, and it shows you how this student did on this item. And you can also, if you want to, it'll break it down into, filter it into different whether it's an English, ELA, it'll reading, writing, listening, research, and inquiry claims within that standard, or math as well. And then from here, if you want to, you can click on, say this is student X, and you want to see on question number 5, they scored, the school average was 6.2, they missed it. You want to see why so many students missed that question. You click on that question, and over here it shows you the question. It shows you the answer the student chose, it shows you the correct answer, and here it shows you the alignment to the standard itself. So for example, if you have this and your teacher's using this, they can bring this same question right up to the board and determine whether it's a misunderstanding of how the question is worded for the students, or whether it is something that actually hasn't been covered and it's a concept the students are not familiar with. So that is, in a nutshell, that's the level of detail you can get on score reports. And I have an entire slide deck for that. And I will make that available to Carrie and Julie. If you guys have any use for those, feel free. I have those resources for you. You can take a peek at them. It just helps you break down those score reports and what you can do with them, and the level of detail.
Yes, we will definitely need those. And I think the other piece to really mention is that down the line, we will, in our regional meetings or at our school level meetings, have more conversation about this. And so it is one of our top things that we will be kind of on top of this year, in terms of not only just taking the assessments or expecting them, but then kind of having those conversations of how schools are utilizing that data and moving forward. And so more information to come on that. And Cindy, I also feel like I need to kind of explain just a little bit more in terms of, and I know Julie's on and she might just want to jump on and explain this better than I can, is that, you know, due to COVID-19, it's kind of messed everything up, right? Here we are. And then also on top of that, we've also looked at our exit criteria at the Montana level, or our plan, state plan, and really wanting to make it so that we have different options in terms of helping schools be able to exit comprehensive status. And by taking this test, it potentially could then be used to show growth at the end of this year. And
given that we didn't have test results last week, that we can potentially have that to show the growth for exit criteria. So you've got it captured.
Said if only one school is comprehensive, do we need to do 3 through 11 testing? And the short answer is no, just the school that is identified in comprehensive.